Get out! Security! Escort this man out now! Derek, the loan manager, ordered loudly. The tension cut through the air as David, the black CEO, slowly reached up to his face. The security guards advanced, hands ready at their belts. "I've simply requested to speak with a manager about my loan application," David explained to Thomas calmly. "I have not raised my voice or been confrontational in any way. We don't give loans out to frauds and people like you." "You're only causing a disturbance," Derek insisted. His own voice was the only one raised in the room. Instantly, the security man kicked David out of the bank. But before David left, something happened that changed everything. This story gives the best karma that happens when employees try to throw their own boss out of his bank. David Gaston built an empire from nothing. The son of working-class parents who had been denied loans 7 times when trying to start their small business in the 1980s, David had promised himself things would be different when he had the power to make change. Now, as the founder and CEO of Meridian Financial with over 200 branches nationwide, his name adorned buildings across the country. His face appeared in business magazines, and his story of rising from humble beginnings to banking magnate was taught in business schools. But on this ordinary Tuesday afternoon, in a small convenience store in his old neighborhood of Westwood, David was just another customer in casual clothes picking up a few items. No tailored suit, no security detail, no executive car waiting outside. Just a man in jeans, a face mask, and a sweater grabbing some essentials before heading home. As he reached for a carton of milk, a conversation from the next aisle cut through the store's quiet ambiance. "Even Meridian turned me down. And they claim to be community-focused," a deep voice said, frustration evident in every syllable. "I did everything right, everything they asked for." "It's always the same story," came another voice heavy with familiar disappointment. "They find any excuse not to give us loans. My credit score is excellent. My business plan was solid. I have collateral. What more do they want?" David froze, his hand still holding the milk carton midair. His bank, the institution he had built from the ground up with a promise of equality, was being discussed this way. He carefully placed the carton in his basket and moved closer, pretending to examine items on a nearby shelf. "I brought all my documentation," the first man continued. "Tax returns, business projections, everything." The loan officer at Meridian barely looked at it before saying I didn't qualify. Then I watched a white guy walk in after me and get approved for a similar amount in half the time. "Same thing happened to my cousin at their downtown branch," the second man added. "It's like they have a quota. We'll approve 1 black business owner this month, and that's our diversity quota filled." It's the same prejudice, just hidden behind fancy mission statements and diversity brochures. And the worst part is it's owned by one of us, a black man. David's chest tightened. He peered around the corner and saw 2 well-dressed black men in their 30s, both with the weary expression of those who've hit the same wall too many times. "You know what's worse?" the taller man said, gesturing with a can of coffee. "Meridian was supposed to be different. Their whole origin story is about serving underrepresented communities. Their founder, that Gaston guy, always talks about financial equality in his speeches." "All talk," his friend replied. "Just marketing to make white people feel good about where they bank. Same discrimination, fancier building." David quietly moved to another aisle, his appetite gone, his mind racing. Was this happening in his bank under his watch? The very institution he had created to solve this problem. Back in his executive office that evening, David stared at the framed mission statement mounted on his wall in elegant calligraphy. "Financial opportunity for all communities." The words now seemed to mock him. Reports and statistics covered his desk. Loan approval rates he'd never personally verified. Customer satisfaction surveys that suddenly felt hollow. Diversity initiatives that perhaps only went surface deep. "Sir, is everything all right?" his assistant asked from the doorway, concerned by the unusual silence from her normally energetic boss. "Cancel my meetings tomorrow." "All of them? Even the Federal Reserve Roundtable?" she asked, alarmed. "Everything." "I need to see this for myself," he whispered. The following morning found David in an unfamiliar apartment in the city, sitting in front of a professional makeup artist who specialized in theatrical transformations. Step by step, his appearance changed. Different glasses with thicker frames replaced his designer ones. Subtle facial hair appeared along his jawline. The makeup artist worked meticulously to alter his cheekbones and add blemishes. Next came the clothes, items bought from department stores that cost a fraction of his usual wardrobe. Gone was the tailored suit and Italian leather shoes, replaced by khakis and a button-down shirt that didn't quite fit right. Most important was the posture. The confident CEO stance replaced by something more hesitant. David practiced in the mirror, rounding his shoulders slightly, making himself smaller in the way people often do when they lack power. "Remember," the makeup artist instructed, "don't make direct eye contact for too long. People who are used to being ignored tend to look away first." 4 hours later, the man who emerged from the apartment looked nothing like David Gaston, whose portrait hung in every Meridian branch. He had become just another customer, one about to experience his own bank from the other side of the counter. With a loan application in his hand containing great financial qualifications under a different name, David headed toward Meridian's flagship branch downtown. His heart pounded with anxiety, not about fooling his employees, but about what he might discover. The flagship branch stood like a monument to success in the heart of the financial district. Gleaming glass, polished marble, and a massive logo. David adjusted his ill-fitting jacket one last time before entering the bank he had built. Inside, he immediately noticed a well-dressed white man in his 40s being greeted warmly near the welcome desk. Samantha, a senior customer service rep, was smiling broadly at him. "Mr. Kensington, so wonderful to see you again," she exclaimed. "How was your daughter's graduation?" "Harvard, wasn't it? You must be so proud." "Yes, political science, following in her old man's footsteps," the man beamed. "That's wonderful," Samantha replied with genuine enthusiasm. "And how's Martha? Has she recovered from her surgery?" "Good as new." "Thank you for asking." Samantha guided him across the lobby. "Derek will take excellent care of you today. He's already pulled your information and set aside a full hour." "Fantastic," Mr. Kensington replied. David observed carefully, noting every detail. This was the Meridian experience he had envisioned for every customer. With Mr. Kensington escorted away, David approached the reception desk where another staff member, Alicia, was typing at her computer. David stood there for nearly 30 seconds before she looked up. "Can I help you?" she asked flatly. "Yes, I have an appointment to discuss a business loan. The name is Williams. David Williams." Alicia scrolled her computer, then, without looking back, slid a clipboard stacked with forms across the counter. "Fill this out and bring it back. Someone will be with you when they're available. No greeting by name. No guided tour. No eye contact." "I believe my appointment was for 10:30, David noted politely, glancing at his watch. "It was 10:32. We're running behind today," Alicia replied without looking up. "Have a seat and fill out the paperwork." David sat in the waiting area, clipboard in hand. Across from him, a young black couple waited with completed paperwork, tired smiles on their faces. The man checked his watch. They had been waiting a long time. Over the next 20 minutes, David observed a painful pattern. 3 white customers entered after him. All 3 were greeted warmly, escorted to loan officers within minutes. One white woman without an appointment asked about refinancing and was immediately paired with someone. Meanwhile, David and the young couple continued waiting. Through the glass partition, David saw Derek Thompson, one of the senior loan officers, enthusiastically showing a white businessman options on his computer. Their body language told the story, leaning in, laughing, a relationship being built. David also noticed subtle differences. At one point, Derek slapped the desk in excitement. "That's exactly the kind of growth potential we love to see. With your background, this approval is practically guaranteed." 25 minutes had passed since David's arrival. The young black couple had been waiting even longer. Meanwhile, another loan officer, Vivian Chen, became available. She whispered with Alicia, glanced toward the waiting area, then disappeared into the break room instead of calling any waiting customers. 5 more minutes passed. David observed 3 loan officers chatting casually by the coffee machine while customers waited. Finally, after 28 minutes, Alicia called his name. "Mr. Williams, Derek can see you now." The young couple exchanged a look of frustration. They had been waiting longer, but David was called first. He made note of their names. Johnson. As David entered Derek's office, the shift was immediate. The welcoming smile and body language Derek had shown earlier were gone. The chair remained pushed in. He didn't stand, only gestured vaguely toward the seat. "Have a seat." "Will's, is it?" "Yes, David Williams," David replied, extending his hand. Derek hesitated noticeably before shaking it briefly. "No small talk, no welcome. You're applying for a business expansion loan of $100,000? Derek asked skeptically. "That's correct. I've included my business plan, financial projections, and collateral documentation. My business has been profitable for 8 consecutive years." Derek barely glanced at the plan. He turned to his computer. "Let's check your credit history before we go any further." "No point wasting time if there are issues." David remained calm. He could see the verdict had already been rendered. Vivian, seated nearby, leaned forward. "Mr. Williams, while Derek reviews your information, perhaps I could show you other loan products. We have several that might be more appropriate." She handed him a glossy brochure for Meridian's Community Business Builder Loan Program. Higher interest rates, shorter terms, and more restrictions. This program is specially designed for entrepreneurs from diverse backgrounds, she emphasized. David scanned the brochure. "My qualifications exceed the requirements for your standard business expansion loan. Why would I choose a product with higher interest and more restrictive terms?" Derek cleared his throat. "Mr. Williams, banking is complex. People from your background often don't understand financial responsibility the same way established business owners do. These specialized products provide guardrails while you build creditworthiness." David's pulse quickened, but he remained calm. "My credit score is 815. I've never missed a payment. My business has been profitable every quarter. What about my background suggests I don't understand financial responsibility?" Derek shifted uncomfortably. "I'm speaking generally, but a loan of this size is substantial. That's a nice suit custom made?" Derek added suddenly, changing the subject. "Department store, actually," David replied evenly. "I live below my means to reinvest in my business. As the financial statements show, I take a modest salary despite strong profits." Derek nodded condescendingly. "Admirable, but let me be direct. Loans like this require scrutiny. The approval committee will want to know why you need such a large amount, and whether you truly understand the obligation. The plan details how every dollar will be allocated," David said, pointing to pages showing $1.2 million in projected revenue within 18 months. More than enough to cover repayment. Derek barely looked. Instead, he leaned back, steepling his fingers. "Let's be honest. Someone like you is statistically a flight risk on a loan of this magnitude. The bank has to protect its interests." David felt a surge of anger, but asked calmly, "What exactly do you mean by someone like me?" Derek's eyes flicked nervously. "Credit demographics, statistical risk categories." "Nothing personal," David pressed. "And which demographic factors? My credit score? My profitable history? Or is there another factor?" Derek shuffled papers, avoiding eye contact. "Race is absolutely not a factor in our decisions," he stammered. "I'm relieved to hear that." "Then let's discuss my application on its merits," David replied evenly. The atmosphere in Derek Thompson's office had shifted. What began as subtle discrimination had hardened into something undeniable. "Let's continue reviewing your application, Mr. Williams," Derek said stiffly. "You mentioned supply chain optimization. That's a competitive sector. What value does your company offer that established firms don't?" David was ready. "We specialize in mid-market companies typically overlooked by larger firms," he explained, turning to the relevant page of his plan. He laid out technical details with precision, showing knowledge that would impress any true professional. Derek's expression tightened. He hadn't expected such expertise. He searched for weaknesses but found none. "These projected returns seem optimistic," Derek muttered, though the figures were backed by documented past performance. Through the glass walls, David noticed a middle-aged white couple being greeted warmly by another loan officer. Handshakes, coffee offered, chairs pulled out. The difference was painful. Derek followed David's gaze. His demeanor hardened further. "If you'd like to apply for a smaller loan, maybe $10,000, we could expedite the process. That would be more realistic for a first-time applicant?" "I'm not a first-time applicant," David corrected calmly. As my documentation shows, I've successfully managed credit lines of up to $500,000 with perfect repayment history. The $100,000 I'm requesting is conservative relative to expansion needs. Derek's irritation showed. His client wasn't fitting the narrative. Vivian whispered, "We're backed up in the queue. Harrison needs help with the Wilsons' jumbo mortgage." Derek glanced at his watch. "Mr. Williams, I think we've covered enough. I'll need to submit this for committee review. That usually takes 7 to 10 business days." "That's interesting," David replied. "Earlier I noticed Mr. Kensington was told his approval was practically guaranteed during his initial consultation. Is there a different process for certain clients?" Derek's face flushed. "Every situation is different. Mr. Kensington has a long-standing relationship with our bank." "I see. And how does one establish such a relationship if applications are treated differently from the start?" David asked. Derek's patience cracked. In a lower voice, he muttered to Vivian, "We're wasting time on this low life when we have real clients waiting." "He looks like a fraud." David heard every word. His anger surged, but his voice remained calm. "I'd like to speak with your manager, please. And about your conduct." "The manager doesn't have time for people who can't qualify for loans," Derek snapped. "If you're not satisfied, perhaps another bank would be a better fit." David stayed seated. "I have the right to speak with a manager." "I'll wait until they're available." Derek stood abruptly. "Mr. Williams, I've been patient. If you're going to be difficult, I'll have to ask you to leave." "Requesting to speak with a manager is standard," David replied firmly. "There's nothing difficult about it." Derek raised his voice. "Security!" A guard named Thomas entered. Derek pointed at David. "This man is being confrontational and refusing to leave after his appointment." Thomas hesitated. David was calm, while Derek was agitated. "I've simply requested to speak with a manager," David explained. "I have not raised my voice or been confrontational." "He's causing a disturbance," Derek insisted. Years of conditioning won out. "Sir, I'll need you to come with me," Thomas said. David stood slowly, gathering his documents. "I understand you're doing your job, Thomas. But I want to be clear that I'm being removed for requesting to speak with a manager after discriminatory treatment." Other customers had begun to watch. The young black couple exchanged knowing glances. As Thomas escorted David toward the exit, they passed another loan officer enthusiastically offering a white couple $200,000 for renovations. The irony was glaring. What Derek didn't know was that his career at Meridian was now measured in minutes. The man being escorted out was about to reveal himself as the founder and CEO of the bank. The walk through the Meridian lobby felt endless. David Gaston, disguised as David Williams, was being escorted out of his own bank by security, past curious customers and uncomfortable employees. For many, it was a familiar scene. Another black loan applicant shown the door. For David, it was devastating proof. Thomas, the young guard, whispered, "I'm sorry, sir. I'm just doing what I'm told." David nodded. He understood. As they neared the entrance, David pulled out his phone. "I need to make a quick call before I leave. Just 1 minute." Thomas hesitated, glancing back at Derek, who watched from across the lobby. Something in David's quiet authority made Thomas agree. David dialed a direct number, one he knew by heart. Upstairs at Meridian headquarters, Executive Vice President Eleanor Matthews answered. "Eleanor, it's David. I'm downstairs in the main branch. I need you here now." Without question, she grabbed her badge and hurried out. Back in the branch, Derek strode toward them, furious. "I told you to remove this man immediately." David calmly began peeling off the subtle disguise, the facial hair, the glasses. His posture straightened, transforming into the commanding presence everyone knew. Employees and customers watched, whispers spreading. The main doors burst open. Eleanor Matthews entered with sharp authority. "Stop everything right now." She scanned the room, eyes locking on Derek. "Mr. Thompson, I presume?" "Yes," Derek replied, confused. Eleanor raised her voice so all could hear. "Ladies and gentlemen, this man standing before you is David Gaston, the founder and CEO of Meridian Financial." Gasps echoed through the lobby. A customer dropped a coffee cup. The young black couple stared in shock. Derek's face drained of color. Vivian grabbed a desk for support. "That's not possible," Derek stammered. Mr. Gaston is standing right in front of you, Eleanor finished. The man you called a lowlife. The man you refused to treat fairly. The man you ordered security to escort out of his own bank. David stepped forward, showing his gold executive ID badge. This entire interaction has been recorded. Along with security footage, we have full documentation of what transpired today. The lobby was silent, heavy with realization. Employees looked horrified. Derek stammered, "If I had known it was you—" "That's the point," David cut him off coldly. "You shouldn't need to know who I am to treat applicants with dignity and fairness." Eleanor's fury was barely contained. Mr. Gaston has been receiving complaints about this branch for months. Today he decided to see it firsthand. David turned to the employees and customers. "I founded this bank because my parents were denied loans based on their skin color. Nothing has changed. The very discrimination I built this bank to fight against is alive here." He faced Derek and Vivian. "Discrimination has no place in banking." "Not in my bank," Eleanor pointed at them. "You have 7 minutes to collect your belongings. Security will escort you out. You are no longer employees of Meridian Financial." Thomas now stood tall, ready to carry out the order. David then approached the young black couple still waiting. "Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, I understand you've been waiting to discuss a loan. I'd be honored to review it with you personally." History was being made, not just for the Johnsons, but for everyone in that branch. The main conference room of the flagship branch had never been this full. Employees lined the walls, silent and tense. Just 40 minutes earlier, they had watched their CEO reveal himself in disguise, exposing discrimination in their midst. Now David stood at the head of the table, Eleanor beside him. Behind them, the company's mission statement glowed on the screen. Financial opportunity for all communities. "What happened today represents a profound failure," David began. "Not just of individuals, but of our culture and our values." Eleanor queued up the footage from David's hidden camera. For several minutes, employees watched Derek's dismissive tone, the condescension, the blatant steering toward inferior products, the slur low life. Then, split-screen comparisons showed how white customers had been treated the same day, with warmth, enthusiasm, and instant approvals. The contrast was undeniable. Some employees looked away in shame. Others seemed stunned. David let the silence linger. "This is not an isolated incident. 17 formal complaints about discrimination at this branch in the past year alone. The pattern is unmistakable," Eleanor spoke firmly. "As of this moment, Derek Thompson and Vivian Chen have been terminated for cause. James Harrington, the security supervisor who allowed customers to be removed for asking to speak with management, has also been terminated." Murmurs rippled, but she silenced them. "This is only the beginning." David moved among his employees as he spoke. "I built Meridian to be different, to be better. Today I learned we have failed that mission. Starting tomorrow, we implement sweeping changes." He outlined them: enhanced fair lending training with real-world scenarios, mystery shopper program using applicants of different races with identical qualifications, results to be reviewed by a new lending equity committee, immediate review of every denied loan from the past 3 months at this branch. Those meeting real qualifications would be approved, with personal apology calls from David himself. "Banking must be an equalizer, not a divider," David declared. "Capital must flow based on merit, not privilege. Starting today, we will live up to this purpose, or we will fail trying." The staff left shaken, but changed. That evening, as the sun set, David returned to the small convenience store where it had begun. By chance, the same 2 men who had sparked his undercover mission were there again. David approached. "Excuse me, gentlemen. My name is David Gaston. I overheard your conversation yesterday about difficulties with loans. I'd like to personally review your applications." At first, they were suspicious. But as David explained, without naming Derek or Vivian, they realized something extraordinary had happened. By the time they parted, both men had appointments at Meridian's executive offices the next morning. For David Gaston, the disguise was gone, but the clarity remained. His mission was renewed, not just to save his bank's purpose, but to prove that fair lending in America was still possible.